Okay, thank you guys for bearing with me. I think on my computer, my next button isn't working. But so yeah, a little bit about me. So I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. So you're probably wondering, how are you in North Carolina? So I actually went to undergraduate at North Carolina A&T State University, which is an HBCU in Greensboro, North Carolina. And from there, I guess I liked North Carolina and decided to stay. So I graduated in May of 2022 with my bachelor's of biology from North Carolina A&T. And then from there, which I'll dive into a little bit in other slides, I decided that I wanted to pursue a master's. So I graduated from Duke University, which is in Durham, North Carolina, with my master's in biomedical sciences in May of 2023. That was only a one-year program, which has its pros and cons, which I'll get into a little later. But just overall, I'm an aspiring physician, first generation, and most importantly, I really value mentorship. So when I was asked to, talk to you guys about my journey to medical school, I was ecstatic because I just love mentoring the next generation of physicians and giving advice, because it can be a lot, when you're the first generation or you're aspiring to go to medical school and you don't really have anyone that you can talk to about, reaching your goals. And then lastly, just a little fun fact about myself. I enjoy traveling and going to music concerts. That's why I wanted to see if anyone was from different countries. I love getting to know more about different cultures and visiting countries and just appreciating different places. All right. Okay. Okay, so this is a big question. Why medicine? So this is something that you're going to be asked a lot on interviews, but most importantly, you have to ask yourself before embarking, this journey of going to medical school and becoming a physician. You have to ask yourself, why medicine? Why am I doing this? Because if you don't have a strong passion, those late nights of studying, those sacrifices when you can't go out with your friends, it's all going to seem like, why am I doing this? So for me, I didn't necessarily grow up knowing I wanted to be a doctor. Everyone says the cliche of I like science. I won't lie, that was true for me too. I did love science. But I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, but not necessarily the physician route. I think the main thing that really sparked my why in medicine was seeing my mom. When I was younger, she did have a brain tumor. Thankfully, it was benign, so non-cancerous. But seeing her journey of recovery, being in the neuro ICU and seeing her go through that, it really sparked my interest in medicine. I think what I liked about medicine specifically is it was a career where I could connect with people at their most vulnerable moments. And I felt like in no other career were people going to trust me and where I could make such a big impact. And so that was my why medicine, which you'll see a little later, is me trying to discover where I fit in medicine. Because, medicine isn't just necessarily, physicians. You also have nurses, nurse practitioners, physical therapists, anesthesiologists, assistants. There's so many ways that you can, impact and help people in medicine. So I knew basically going into college that I wanted to be somewhere in the healthcare field, but you'll see a little later, it's a nonlinear path of getting to why being a physician or why did I want to apply to medical school. And most importantly, for why medicine, growing up, I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me as physicians, as doctors. And that's why I'm so big on mentorship, because I want to help anyone who needs help, because I was at, high schooler not really knowing how to apply to college, that high schooler not really knowing how to navigate being a pre-med. So that's another reason why not only do I want to be in medicine, but I want to be a leader in medicine that's able to help the next generation. Okay, now my clicker is working. Okay, so this is what I was saying, my nonlinear path. And these are just some little points that I have, but I'm going to kind of break it down. So like I said, coming into college, I did start as a bio major. So I started at North Carolina A&T in 2018. And one thing I will say, especially now, you don't have to major, in biology or even in a science to apply to medical school. You just have to make sure that you get all your prereqs done. So I know some people who majored in English or majored in psychology or other things that aren't necessarily, your biology, biochem, neuroscience. I will say it helped being a bio major because in my curriculum, I was easily able to just knock out all of my prereqs for medical school. But if that's not something that you're interested in, you have another passion that you want to pursue, you can do that. So I came in as a freshman. I kind of had an open mind. I had wanted to like see if I wanted to go in dentistry. But from talking to some people, I quickly realized that wasn't for me. I think it's an amazing profession. So once again, this is why I'm big on collaboration. So it's actually an upperclassman who said, okay, well, this is what I did the summer of my freshman year. And she told me about this amazing opportunity called SHPEP, which stands for Summer Health Professions Educational Program. So I did that the summer of my freshman year, and I think I chose that as the first starting point of my journey to medical school, because that's when I kind of reconfirmed not only did I want to be in medicine, that I wanted to be a physician. And I actually have a slide later that goes a little more in depth about the program. But a general synopsis is that this program is offered to first and second year college students who are interested in healthcare profession careers, whether that's medicine, dentistry, they have nursing and PT. It's free. It's for 6 weeks. I did mine at Columbia University in New York City, but there's also other institutions that you can do it with. So basically, in this internship, you're in summer courses. So they're preparing you for the courses that you would take the next semester. So for me, I think I did biostatistics and organic chemistry one. But not only that, you're getting really good hands-on shadowing in seminars. So I was able to shadow across various New York City hospitals. I think I shadowed some surgeries. You can rotate through different specialties. And that was really eye-opening for me because I never was able to shadow before. But also we just had different seminars learning about topics like health equity, social determinants of health. And most importantly, I really gained a sense of community. I met two lifelong friends and I gained a huge cohort of people that I still stay connected with on LinkedIn and social media. And a lot of them, are already in medical school or on their second or third year. So it's amazing to see how far we came. So that was kind of my first stop that like I can do this. And I felt supported by SHPEP because even though it was only 6 weeks, I had contacts that I could go back to, professors that could write letter recommendations for me. And they kind of gave me the blueprint and the steps of what do I need to do to apply to medical school? So the next point I have on my journey is I graduated from North Carolina A&T with my Bachelor of Science in Biology in May of 2022. So between SHPEP and graduating, after that first summer of my freshman year, I got even more involved on my campus, which you'll see a little later. So one of the things that I did is, I think it was my sophomore year, I was in writing for biology and my professor had expressed that she does some research. So after class, which is a great thing you guys can do, I literally just talked to her about her research and I asked her if it was okay if I could help her out in the lab or if she had any availability for students. And from there, I was with Dr. Simone Smith for 3 years doing research. So a lot of these opportunities honestly just came from me taking the initiative and, just being in the right place and not afraid to put myself out there. I was also involved in organizations like Global Medical Brigades, which we were able to actually go over to Guatemala and do a brigade. And one thing that I like about Global Medical Brigades is they're really focused on sustainability. They don't want people just coming over and volunteering and that's the end all be all. They have physicians from the home country of Guatemala there 365 days a year to provide care continuously. And we were kind of just under the direction of the physicians. I think that's really important, especially when going to places internationally. And once again, you can do community service, not only just internationally, you can do it right in your backyard. So just getting involved in whatever city you're in, whatever town you're in college, or even in high school. And this is the time to really explore your options and see, okay, is medicine really for me? And if it is, how can I connect to people? So I did a lot of different things, which I will explain a little more during college. So we came to my senior year and I was thinking about applying straight through, but it was too much for me. I was sitting there my junior summer year and I was like, do I want to apply straight through? But I just couldn't juggle taking the MCAT and, finishing my senior year. So I decided that I did want to take a gap year. From there, I was deciding, what did I want to do during this gap year? Did I just want to work? Did I want to get a master's? If I did, where and why? So then going to my third bullet, I did decide to do a master's. I specifically chose Duke because, like I said, I was in North Carolina. I would still remain in North Carolina. Also, Duke's program was only 1 year, which I thought was very unique. It is very, advanced and kind of, a lot at once is only 1 year, but what I liked is that they really prepared you for medical school, because the professors there teach the same courses that they teach us, the Masters of Biomedical Sciences students, to the first year medical students at Duke. So I really think that program really prepare me academically for medical school. And not everybody needs a master's program. That's something that, you have to decide on your own, whether it's for academic enhancement or if you feel like you just need a little more preparation. So overall, I took 2 gap years. So on to the fourth bullet point. So when I graduated from Duke in May of 2023, I started applying. But when you apply to medical school, it's a whole year ahead. So during that year of applying, I decided to work at Duke, and going to Duke for my master's opened a lot of opportunities. Duke is an amazing institution for research. So actually, it was the Department of Anesthesiology. They came to my class, my Master's of Biomedical Sciences class, and they talked about some jobs that they had. So then I applied, and I worked there from June of 2023 until literally 2 months ago. And that sparked my interest in anesthesiology, which I love now. And I really fell in love with clinical research. I did some, bench work before, which I thought was also beneficial and I liked, but I love interacting with people. And that was a really amazing job. Not only did it help me get more clinical experience, but also seeing the other side of research, the regulatory side of things, making sure we're in line with the FDA, and protocols like that. Overall, it just made me very well-rounded. Also being able to work well in a healthcare team setting. I've talked to nurses, talked to patients and their family. So I really think that prepared me for the more clinical side of medical school. And now now I'm here now in July of 2024. I literally start my orientation Monday, so wish me luck. So I'm an incoming medical student at ECU. And you can see these 5 bullets, but what you can't see is, the failures and the times that I had self-doubt. And I don't know, where you guys are in your journey, whether you're in high school or you're in college. You're kind of thinking, hey, maybe last semester wasn't the best semester. That doesn't mean that you won't become a doctor. That does mean that you're going to have to redirect yourself and get refocused and see how you can improve. But it's not an end all be all. And I'll share a quick story. I remember it was my sophomore year, spring semester. I thought literally life was over. I had, like everyone says, that C in organic chemistry. Oh my God, I'm not going to med school. You can't get a C and go into medical school. I thought it was impossible back then. But after it happened, I was sad. I was sad for a long time. But then I realized, okay, well, there's some other aspects that I'm really amazing at. And I'm not going to let this one flaw stop me from medical school. But I did have to stop and reevaluate, okay, how can I improve myself? Because I'm going to have to take organic chemistry too. So from there, over that summer, I was able to learn more about, active study methods. And that really helped me for the rest of, my time in undergrad. So if you are having a semester where you're not doing well, really take the initiative to get help, whether that's through tutors or talk to other students who are doing well, and just know that you can reach your goal. Or if you had to take gap years and you're not going straight through. I took 2 gap years. It's becoming more and more common for people to take gap years. And so it's okay if, even if everything is good, you feel like you're ready to apply, but you just want to take a year off to, relax or work or do other things. That's okay, because at the end of the day, you see with this path, you're still going to end up where exactly you need to be. And that will be getting into medical school. Okay, so I did say I wanted to dive a little more into my experience at Columbia. So this was, like I said, it's free. It's a 6-week program, and I think I have it right here. So this is something that you guys can actually apply to. I know some of you guys are in high school, but if you're going to be a freshman or a sophomore in the school year 2024 to 2025, you can apply to this program. It actually opens November 1st and it closes February 1st. So like I said, this program is offered to those who are interested in medicine, dentistry, nursing, pharmacy, public health. As you can see, it's very broad of what you're interested in. And this is just a picture of me at, the Columbia University Medical Center sign. And one thing that I love that they do is they do a white coat ceremony, which is something you usually do at the beginning of medical school or, your health professionals program. So we really got to, feel like we were medical students. And I think the symbolism of putting on the white coat really showed me this is something that I can achieve. But most importantly, it gave me the tools. So we had a lot of seminars kind of similar to this, going over, okay, what do you need to do to apply to medical school? Who do you need to connect to? And then also there was the course component. So you're in class 5 days a week learning the two subjects that you will take the next semester. So they're trying to prepare you to do well in whatever coursework you're going to take the next year. I think some people took anatomy, organic chemistry, biostats, chemistry, and everyone, even me, I felt like it really prepared me to what I was going to see the next semester and kind of gave me like a head start. It wasn't the first time I was seeing this information when I did take the course the next semester, but most importantly, it's the clinical exposure you get. So we have full access to the hospitals. I was taking the trains. If anyone's from New York City, listen, I got lost a couple times on the trains, but I'm taking the trains to different boroughs and going to different hospitals, and I'm shadowing physicians who are more than willing to, let me come and see what they're doing. So I think that hands-on experience was amazing, because I was able to connect with physicians and connect with the professors who were teaching these courses for future letter recommendations and just for mentorship. And most importantly, we had fun. We were in New York City for the summer, so your weekends are free. Sometimes they have days where they have a dinner or, a lecture or a seminar, but other than that, you're free to go and do what you want. We went to concerts, we went to so many places, parks, anything, you name it, we went to. And like I said, Columbia University is one site, but I think there's up to 13. And when you apply, you can choose your top three. And from there, you'll get in. And if you get into multiple, you'll just choose which one you want to get into. But I recommend this to anybody who's on the pre-med, pre-health track. And I think it's amazing that they offer it to freshmen and sophomores, because sometimes, opportunities are geared to more upperclassmen, but this is something that you can do literally the summer of your freshman year in college. And I think this opportunity is invaluable. In fact, I want to say on the M.D.s application in secondaries, this is one of the programs that you can check that if you did, because it's nationally recognized, because they know that these programs really help prepare the next generation of physicians, especially, those who are first generation immigrants, low income. It really helps give those students the opportunities and resources that they need. Okay, so from there, from being at Columbia University for SHPEP, is like I said, I met some of the closest friends. So that's me on the right, but on the left is one of my close friends, Raven, who actually just started medical school at the University of Houston. And one thing that we had in common is we believe in the motto of collaboration over competition. We both were like, we had so many opportunities that we would know about, and I would just send them to my friends. But I'm like, let's make a platform where we can get this information out to the masses. So we came together, I want to say it was December of 2019. So after we met in July of 2019, we decided to make this platform called Health Hotspots. And really the aim of this platform was just to provide students with research opportunities, scholarships, internships, anything you can think of. And it was geared to pre-health students. Even though we were on the pre-med side of things, you still want to include dentistry, pre-nursing, because we had a lot of friends that were doing these things. So we decided to make a website. And from there, we kind of made a generator where you would type in a location and we give you a list of internships. And this website is still up, and you can follow our Instagram if you want to. We post weekly as much as we try to as we get the opportunities in. We'll post internships, things like that. And I think the craziest thing was when I was in my master's program, my friend Amaria, who's now first year medical student coming in July at University of South Carolina in Greenville, South Carolina, she was like, I follow your page already. You're the one who told me, posted this opportunity to do research at Northwestern. So I didn't really know people were really looking at this, and it was really helping them. So that's really one of my passion projects. And that's something that I just talked about on my medical school application. And I really just want you guys to know, if you follow your your passions, it will all work out on your application. Sometimes I remember students will be like, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things? Will medical schools like this? I feel like if you follow your passions and you give it your all, it's going to show that this is something that you're involved in. This is something that you care about. And I didn't realize how much impact this platform had. It was just something I was doing out of my heart because I really like, building a community of pre-meds. Because sometimes, we do have a stereotype of being in pre-med as being overly competitive or cutthroat. And I feel like there's more than enough room for all of us to share these resources because we want people coming into medicine that are compassionate. And I think that's really important. But this is something that we created and we still have going. Now we're still posting internships and scholarships, but we're gearing more into medical school content as we are both starting our first year of medical school. So yeah, that's a little bit about my passion project, Health Hotspots. And you can choose anything that you're passionate about. I've known some people, there was somebody that I met who's now a resident, anesthesiologist resident, who started his own mobile clinic and he went big, but you can do it in a small way. Whatever you're passionate about, you can take that and make a difference in your community. Okay. So now I wanted to segue a little more into how to find clinical experiences as a pre-med. I think it's very important that you have clinical experience as a pre-med. There's no set of numbers or magical number to get in medical school, but the more clinical experience, the better. Not necessarily even just to get in, but just to make sure, medicine is something that you want to do. It is a long commitment. And the more exposure that you have, the better. And I definitely understand this may be a little before in college during COVID. So a lot of times you couldn't really get, the in-person clinical experience. But now there's like so many opportunities to still, get shadowing hours and kind of get exposed a little more, even virtually. So one of the tips I have is networking. I feel like we always say this networking is so important, but I've literally seen it in my life. Like I said, everything kind of started at Columbia. And then from there, I just met so many people that would have opportunities from being in SHPEP. We were on the newsletter list that would send out internships and different things like that. So I was always connected. And, you can network at conferences. If they have research symposiums at your institution, that's a good way to network. And I feel like if you're here right now on this Zoom, you're already doing a great job because you're showing that, this is something that you really care about and you really are passionate about your journey to becoming a doctor. So networking is really important and just be genuine. People from most time love people who take an initiative and are proactive. So even me, if someone emails me about an opportunity, I love the fact that they took the initiative to ask about it. So sometimes I'm even a more shy person, so I get kind of scared to walking up to people or reaching out. But if you come with a genuine and professional manner, I think that's a great way to get clinical experience. The next one is social media and websites. Going back to Health Hotspots, we post opportunities, and a lot of the internships actually have a clinical experience to them. So some of the internships may be research-based, more bench work, but other ones are more, MCAT preparation, but they also have shadowing hours or clinical time where they're mixed. So following, more academic pages or pages that post these opportunities is a great way just to see if there's any clinical experiences. So the next one that I did is volunteering at a clinic. So like I said, I'm in North Carolina. For about a year and a half, I volunteered at a place called Pitt Community Care Center. So it was a free clinic ran by the medical students at Brody School of Medicine, but they also had opportunities for pre-med students to volunteer. And there we just did vitals with blood pressure, took the height and weight. But most importantly, I was able to, just get more exposure to different illnesses and conditions and seeing how, the doctors and medical students came up with a diagnosis and plan for them. I think that's a great way, and you can volunteer when you have time, and this can apply to any area that you're at. Usually, if you look at your public health department or just look up free health clinics in your area, look to see if they have any opportunities. And going back to networking, if you don't see an application, you could ask, "Hi, my name is Nia Hammond. I'm a rising third-year student at North Carolina A&T. I'm an aspiring physician who is very passionate about helping the underserved. I would love to volunteer at this clinic." And, if they respond, great. If they don't, there might be some other clinics, but at least you took that step to kind of getting more clinical experience. So the next one is getting a certification like EMT or phlebotomy. And this one can be tricky sometimes because sometimes these certifications may take a long time, like a semester or so. But I do know a lot of people who did get a phlebotomy certification and it didn't take too long, or a medical assistant certification. And sometimes, depending on your university, they'll offer it for free, or also offer it at a community college. So something that I did is I did become an EMT, but I got that certification during my master's program. So one of the requirements at Duke's Master's of Biomedical Sciences is that you become an EMT. So before we even started our courses, we took an EMT certification through Durham Community College. So once again, you can look in your area to see if there's any EMT or phlebotomy or medical assistant certifications offered. And in my class, there were some Duke University undergrad students who were there just taking the course on their own. So it is doable. It is suggested maybe if you do take an EMT certification to do it during semesters that's maybe lighter or during the summer, because it can be intensive. It's almost like another class and with the studying and commitment time. And then the last one is cold calling and emailing. And I know sometimes you'll see this and like, Nia, does this really work? And I'll tell you a story. It does. That's actually how I got my first clinical experience. I was interested in clinical research, so I emailed this place called High Point Clinical Trials, and this is before COVID. And they literally called me 6 months later with an unknown number. And I'm like, hello? They're like, oh, this is High Point Clinical Trials. I'm like, oh, really? They're like, yeah, we saw your email. I was asking to volunteer, and they were calling about getting a paid position. So sometimes you never know when these opportunities are going to come back. So just take your chance. And like I said, as long as you're doing it professionally in a genuine manner, that's the best you can do. So if you want to research some doctor's offices, some doctor's offices will take, pre-med students. Some do prefer you that have the medical assistant certification, but that's a great way using cold calling or emailing. But you can also combine it with networking. Hi, Dr. So-and-so. I was recommended to reach out to you by this professor or this person that I met, or asking people, do you know anybody, who that I can work under? Those are great ways to get clinical experience. And then everyone talks about this one, shadowing. Shadowing is also just important, just observing, because that's an easy way to get it. But I think the best clinical experience is hands-on, but I know that can be hard at times. And you just start your freshman year and try your best to get as much as you can. And I think that's really important because medical schools are looking for people who do have clinical experience to make sure that this is something that you really want to do and that you know what you're getting into. Okay, so these are just some of my examples of my clinical experiences before medical school. So I did obtain my EMTB license. Now, why do I think that was really beneficial? I think that was beneficial because it was kind of like just a rundown of all medical things in a semester. I think I took the course from that summer and it ended in the winter time, but this was through Duke's Master of Biomedical Sciences program at the community college. But the clinical experience is unmatched because you're really getting hands-on, interacting with people during emergencies. Most importantly, allowed me to think fast and think under pressure, which is something that you're going to need in the future. And then, like I said, volunteering. I volunteered at the Pitt County Care Clinic in Greenville, North Carolina, and I would just go when I could. I didn't necessarily go every weekend, but one thing I did is it was for a long time. So if you want to get clinical research or volunteer somewhere, pick a couple places and stick with it. We want to see that you have commitment to this place and that you're not necessarily just checking off a box. It's something that you're really dedicated to. And this was what the clinical experience that I got from cold calling was working as a clinical research assistant at High Point Clinical Trials. So as a clinical research assistant, it is research, but it is clinical. So it's involving humans. So I would draw their blood and I would also spin their blood. And I didn't have a phlebotomy certification. Some jobs will just train you on the job. And this is one of the jobs that did that. And that was from cold calling before COVID. They called 6 months later. And I worked there for about a year and a half part-time during college. And then sometimes I had a lot of friends who necessarily didn't get a lot of clinical experience during college because they were in other things. So they took a gap year to get clinical experience and work full time. And you can do a plethora of things. You can work in clinical research, you work as an EMT, medical assistant. There's so many different things that you can do, scribe. So I worked again in clinical research for full time, and this was after my master's program. Okay, so I do want to go over some do's and don'ts of medical school, applying to medical school. Okay, so one of them are do understand the missions of the schools you want to apply to. And I'll give you an example, right? So I said I went to my master's at Duke, and now I'm going to an institution called ECU Brody School of Medicine. So these two schools, although they're medical schools, they have two different missions. One of the main missions at the school I'm going to, ECU, is helping those who are underserved and in rural areas. I am in Greenville, North Carolina, so that's a patient population that they cater to. Duke kind of has a different mission. They're more about innovation and research. So it's important to kind of know what medical school that you're applying to so you can see if that's the best fit for you. And also, what your experiences are. They better tailored to an institution that's more focused on research, or are you more passionate about community care and things like that? And also knowing the mission and what the curriculum of the medical school that you're applying to is very important. For example, Duke has a 1-year preclinical, ECU has a 2-year. So those are some things that, you can see if it fits you better or not. Oh, sorry. The next one is don't rush to apply. So that was me my junior year. I thought I needed to apply my junior year to go straight through. But after sitting down with myself, I realized that I had a better chance if I waited because there were some areas in my application that I needed help with or needed to improve. So if for you, you're sitting down, Nia, academically, I have a 4.0, I'm ready to go, I'm applying. But you're looking back, hey, I really haven't got some clinical experience yet. Maybe this isn't the best cycle to apply. Maybe take a gap year to get that clinical experience working somewhere. Or if you want to pursue other things, if you want to get your master's of public health because that's an area you want to do before medical school. Or you're like, yeah, I feel like I'm ready, but I just want to work and relax. You can do that too. I think it's important for you to sit down with a trusted advisor. If not a pre-med advisor, I know some at certain schools can be the best or not the best. You can talk to a current medical student or somebody like that and say, hey, this is, what I have so far. I'm thinking about applying, but I don't know. Because applying, it's a lot. It's very taxing on you, and it's important to have everything ready. The earlier, the better, honestly. Okay, do get feedback on AMCAS applications. So AMCAS applications is the application service you apply to M.D. schools for medical school. So it's very important that you don't have typos because that will delay, your time of getting processed. Putting in your transcript, everything has to be verbatim. When you're doing your work and activities, you don't want any typos or anything like that because this is what they're reading your application to decide if you're going to get a secondary interview. So that goes with don't rushing to apply. If you're rushing, you're rushing with writing your work and activities, you're rushing with writing your personal statement, and you're not getting the feedback that you need. I would recommend getting feedback from about 3 people. Doesn't need to be 100 because it is your story when it comes to your personal statement and your work and activities. I would say someone who's currently in medical school, maybe a current physician. And if you don't know somebody, you can always ask me. I'll have my email at the end for the future. But a current medical school student or physician, a faculty member, pre-med advisor, somebody that you trust, and even a friend or a parent, even if they don't necessarily have the eye for what should be in a medical school application, they can give you, hey, Nia, you had this typo in this paragraph, just overall editing. So a don't is don't compare yourself to others, right? I don't know if you guys been on Reddit or Student Doctor Network. Sometimes you can go down the rabbit hole of, am I, competitive enough to apply? Do I have the stats? Do I have 1,000 research hours? Like everyone's application is different. I have friends who have 4.0s. I have friends who don't. I have friends who have very high MCAT scores. I have friends who have 3 publications. I have friends who don't. And they all got into medical school because their application was different and where they're applying to and what they wanted was different. Every school doesn't want the same thing. I think that's very important not to compare yourself and your journey. Some people go straight through, some people take 5 years. It really just depends. But the number one thing is that you're determined to reach your goal. If you know you want to be a doctor, you're going to get there, regardless of the time it takes and how and when and where. So do ask for your letter of recommendations early. So that goes back to don't rush to apply. It's important that you give your recommenders time to get their letters together, because there might be a lot of students asking for letter recommendations. And the last don't is don't use cliche statements. I did say earlier that I love science, and that is true, but you don't want to open up your personal statement with, I love science and I want to help people. Although that might be a genuine statement for you, they want to know a little more depth of your why. So now I'm going to open up the floor for any questions. I think I see one hand now. And you can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand. In 1 second, I'm just going to drink some water.
Okay, hello.
Hello.
What are the entrance exams to study medicine at Oxford?
Okay, so yes, so the entrance exams, particularly to the medical schools, MD and DO, is the MCAT. It is about an 8 hour long exam. It has four sections. One section is CARS, which is more reading comprehension. The next one is psychology and sociology. And then you have physics and chemistry, and then you have biology and biochem. It takes different people different times to study. I have friends who studied in a month. I have people who studied over a year, but it is the MCAT. There's a lot of different videos and resources out there to help you prepare. But that is a very important aspect of applying to medical school, taking your MCAT and doing well on it.
Okay, can I ask another question, please?
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm in high school and I want to apply for a full scholarship, do you recommend applying in your country or in another country? I'm in Egypt.
So I can't speak on that because I did attend high school in the United States, but one of my best friends who's now a first year student at CDU, she did high school in Jamaica and she got a full ride to NC State under their Good Night Scholarship. It was a scholarship geared to international students. So I'm not too familiar with that process,
But
but I do know there's scholarships out
can I
there.
ask something?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so in Egypt, things are not like there's no scholarships
Okay.
until like college. So what I'm talking about, if you got a high school, going to high school, not college, like USA, wouldn't that make it easier for college?
Okay. I'm not sure. Are you saying like if it would make it easier for you to go to high school in the USA and then apply to a college in USA?
Yeah, that was what I was talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not entirely sure. I would assume it would probably make it easier for everything and for you to get scholarships, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
Thank you.
So my question is, as a high school student, what kind of qualities do you think that we should improve on that will help us through the entire medical journey? And when we face failures, then how to not be discouraged and improve ourselves and not be discouraged?
Yeah. I think the number one quality is resiliency. Because along this path, not even just in medical school, when you get into residency, you are gonna fail. You're not gonna know everything. It's impossible. And that's one thing I had to working on, being able to learn from my mistakes academically, whether you didn't have the best semester, sitting down and saying, how can I improve? One thing is improving your studying habits. There's so many videos on YouTube and resources about active learning and studying. I feel like that's one of the key things to having a good semester is being organized, implementing active studying techniques, and getting the resources you need, whether that's meeting with professors or students in group studying. So to answer your question, I would say resiliency is the number one thing, a quality that you should have as a pre-medical student aspiring to go into medical school.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm also a part of Global Medical Brigades, and I was wondering if that was ever brought up in your interviews or how that overall affected your medical school applications and like kind of your perspective on medicine.
I don't think it was ever like directly brought up, but I'm trying to remember. There's just so many questions that I would kind of just talk about my experience, during global medical brigades. So a lot of times in interview questions, they can be sometimes like direct or they can be open-ended. So you can talk about, hey, like tell me about your clinical experience. You can talk about when you went on the brigade and what your experience was like that. So that's why it's important to get involved when you do get to the interview stage and you're writing your work and activity section of your application. You have a lot that you can talk about.
Irene, I'm not sure, but a few of them have their hands raised. I don't know if you're able to see that on your screen. I can help call them out if that makes it easier for
Okay,
you.
yeah, that might make it easier. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we can start with Dina Ammer. Okay, I'll give her a minute. We can move on to Jana Mohammed.
Oh yeah. Hi. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Uh, I'm good, thank you. I'm just wondering, what are the best features if I want to get into medical school? Also, what can I do if there aren't any volunteering chances from the local community?
Sorry, you're breaking up just a bit. Did you say what are the best opportunities or majors to get into medical school?
No, what are the best extracurriculars I can do if I want to get into medical school? But what can I do if there aren't any volunteering chances from the local community?
Okay, yeah. So that's the one thing I think COVID actually changed and actually in a way helped pre-med students is now you can do virtual things just like this opportunity here. If you can't find anything locally where you are, there's virtual shadowing, there's virtual volunteering, to kind of help you get that experience that you need. I think that's a great way to start, if you can't find anywhere that's local to you physically.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is for Paul Anish. Okay, I give him a minute. We can move on to Divya Prem. So she said she's unable to unmute, but her question is, um, so what you did in high school in terms of extracurriculars that were geared to pursue pre-med?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I was very involved in high school, like, your National Honor Society sports. I did do IB program, the International Baccalaureate program at my school. It was offered. Um, I don't think I actually did anything pre-med related because I didn't necessarily know that was the path I wanted to go. I was just very involved in my community through volunteering, student government on the state level. So I want to say I did volunteer at a nursing home, but it was for occupational therapy. Because once again, I didn't know I wanted to be a physician or even thought I could be one. So I did do that. I think that's a great way. Now they have a lot of different high school internships, things that you can get involved with, even doing research during your summer for high schoolers, on the internet. I think that's a great way, but also just starting in your community. So if there is a health department in your community, asking how you can get involved, things like that, or even organizing your own, community fair, you can take the initiative to organize something like that. I think that would be a great way. I want to say some of my friends, they were involved in like STEM clubs. I wasn't personally, but that's a good way as well. Not necessarily healthcare, but STEM related. But yeah, that's kind of like a little bit of what I did in high school.
Okay, so can I ask you another question,
Yeah,
please?
go ahead.
Okay, since you went to IB or International Baccalaureate, I'm going to change the way I'm studying to IB Baccalaureate next year. So I wanted to ask you, do you think that it was different, or is it good, or many people tell me that it's so difficult. So I wanted to ask about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't sugarcoat it was difficult, but in a way, honestly, I'll tell you, I think IB was harder than college.
Oh, should I quit?
For certain courses, but I think it prepared me because I wasn't like a lot of times when people came to college, that was their first time really studying hard. For me, it wasn't. Um, and I think IB really helped me become a critical thinker. Um, but I will say the way IB, if it is it's still the same, I graduated in 2018 with the test and the mark scheme. When I took IB Bio, it was a lot more critical thinking than what biology, genetics, all those courses in college were. but I think it helped me a lot. So I think if that's something that you want to do, to pursue it, it also allowed me to get a lot of credits for my institution coming into college. So I like the IB. I think it made me a very well-rounded student overall.
So it's worth it.
Awesome. So the next question we'll take is from Ritaj.
Hey, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I wanted to ask a question. As a high school student, what should I do in general to prepare for my medical journey? Also, what are the most required exams for applying to scholarships?
Okay. Yeah, so I think as a high school student, you should just focus on excelling in your courses, taking higher level courses in science, getting your foundation in biology, getting your foundation in chemistry. If you can take, advanced placement or if they have dual enrollment, those are all important because, it is required to get into medical school that you do the prereqs, and a lot of the prereqs are in these science courses, and you do want to do well. So I think if you have a good foundation in chemistry, that will help. I remember being in general chem. Some people in my college didn't take it in high school, so it was a lot for them to learn coming straight into college. But if you can have that background in chemistry and bio, I think that will really help you in physics because that's also required as a prereq. That can really help you. And what was your second question?
Okay, my second question.
Yes.
It was the most required exams for applying to scholarships.
Okay, so I think I've applied to a lot of scholarships in college. When I was applying from high school into college, they would require my SAT, but once I was in college, they really just require my transcripts to see my grades. If you're applying for medical school scholarships, a lot of times through the institution you're applying to, they're going to require your MCAT. But once you're in medical school, they don't really require your MCAT. It's just seeing your transcripts, your academic record.
Okay, thank you. But I want to say another thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love physics and biology, but really, I can't deal with chemistry.
Yeah, I don't like it either, but I don't know. People have their differing opinions if it's needed. And in a way, it is needed because it will help you when you get, into biochem and you're learning the mechanisms of how medications work and all those things. Um, But I just want you to know you're not alone. There's so many people who are in medical school right now and say they never used organic chemistry or certain chemistry things ever again. But you just have to, once again, this goes back to your resiliency. If you're experiencing a course you don't like, remembering your why. I want to become a doctor, and this is just one hurdle I have to get over. So, that's just something that you have to do. And it's okay if you don't like every, science and chemistry course. I didn't either.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Awesome. The next question we'll take is from Jocelyn.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. Okay, so earlier in your presentation, you had said that you were first gen, and my question is less of a question and more so advice because I'm also first gen. I just graduated from the IB program at my school, and I'm going up to the University of Reno, but I just wanted like just general advice because I've been having like a hard time navigating the whole pre-med everything too. So I just wanted just general advice, things like that.
Yeah. I think general advice is find somebody who is an upperclassman that's doing what you want to do. For me, I'm so thankful to my mentor, Sydney. She's a fourth year now at VCU, and I know she's applying to optometry specialty, but she's about 3 years above me. But she was the one who told me, hey, apply to SHPEP because she did it the year before. So I think finding mentors is really important. And, maybe come in, you can't find someone specifically, or, you don't really get to interact with upperclassmen. Going to whatever pre-med or center you can just to find resources is very important. I think, like you said, as being first generation, finding people who have already done what you're trying to do is so important because we don't really know the steps to get there. But most importantly, just staying focused on your academics and not overwhelming yourself. I'm definitely a person who loves to do all these clubs because I genuinely just want to be in everything. but picking a couple things that you're passionate about and really setting the foundation for your college career and doing well in those courses, I think comes before, doing a bunch of things. Join a club, maybe one or two your first semester, but really just lock in with your academics and seeing what study methods work for you and how you're able to perform on the college level.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So, Nia, just to be respectful of your time, let us know how many more questions you can take, and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, I know we started a little later, so I'm able to take more questions. Whatever time frame you guys are on, you just let me know when to stop. I have nothing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll take a few more questions, and if you guys do have any questions that were unanswered, if Nia's up for it, you guys can try reaching out when you get a chance to after the session. So the next question we'll take is from Malak Ahmad.
So, hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I want to ask to how to get a fully funded scholarship to study medicine in the US.
Okay, so I am not too familiar, but I know there is a lot of scholarships that you can get funded to study in the US. I don't know specifically for med school. I know more for grad school. I personally just follow these people on LinkedIn, and I see them talking about it. So I think I would go to places like LinkedIn, go to Instagram, more academic pages, and find people who have done that. I don't know about one internationally, but the National Science Foundation, I know they have fully funded grants for people to study. I don't know anything specific, but if I was in your shoes, I would just start there. LinkedIn is a great opportunity. If you literally type in fully funded in the United States, I promise you something will pop up. I'm so sorry that I don't know more about that, but
Awesome. The next question will be from
No
Ishan.
problem. Thank you. I appreciate your help.
you're welcome.
All right. Thanks for answering my question. My main question is, you gave us a lot of different programs for us to consider getting experience, and I was wondering if they would be useful for someone like me who's not considering, or someone who's at this point is not going into like medicine as a field. But who's going into a scientific field nonetheless? Do you think it would be useful for me to get research experience or
Yeah,
something along those lines?
yeah, I think so. Because a lot of these, I don't know, when you say scientific, are you thinking more PhD route or what are you thinking?
I'm thinking more PhD route. My career presumably will require a lot of lab work since
Mhm.
I want to be a biologist.
Yeah, I definitely think so. A lot of these like pre-med internships, a lot of them are just research. And literally one of them I did at UMass, half were pre-med, half were PhD prospective applicants. And I literally still see them on Instagram and LinkedIn now they're in their PhD program. So I think a lot of these programs have crossover, especially when it comes to more research-based things you can still do to help you apply to PhD programs because you will need some research experience, especially applying to PhD programs.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next question will be from Sarah Mohammed.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to ask you some questions. The first is, what the most difficult thing in medical school, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So, I'll just, pull from my experience in my master's program. I think the most difficult thing is time management. And I think if we didn't have any other obligations, then studying would just be fine. But a lot of times if you're still living with your family, you may have to take care of family members and study, work and study, still have time to sleep, still time to do other things. So I think time management is the most important thing, because the coursework is hard and it's very demanding. So getting organized, and also sometimes you just have to let people know, I can't do these things because I'm focused on studying right now, and this is the goal I'm trying to reach. And it's just all about time management and balance. So knowing, hey, this is my study block. I'm going to study from this time to this time. One thing that I do is, taking it in chunks. If I study for 50 minutes, taking a 10-minute break, that helps. And just knowing certain days, okay, I want to go to work out or go to the gym on Thursdays. That's my designated day for doing that. So I think the hardest thing is time management, because even if not in med school, pre-med, it's a lot. You're in school, you're trying to do all these things all at once. And if you're not organized, it's going to be too much.
Okay, but the second one is, when did you realize that you are a medical student and you are capable to these?
Yeah, I think it was Shapep, honestly, doing that program, because before I knew, like I knew I was smart. I've always done, been in advanced class, things like that. But I was like, I don't know, maybe med school is too long and whatnot. But it was just always something that was on my heart. And I didn't want it to be like, I didn't want to follow my passion because I thought it was too hard or too long. But once I was in an environment with other students who were also like, yeah, no, I feel the same way, what they call imposter syndrome, thinking that, you're not good enough or this is something you can't do. But once we were all surrounded together and finding friends who are also on this journey, I think that's very important. If you have friends or people in your college or university that you can talk to that are also aspiring doctors and holding each other accountable, it makes the goal more realistic, and it makes it more doable that, you can do this. And hearing the stories of people who are already in medical school who are doing it, it's not impossible. It is hard, but it's not impossible in any means. So really realizing if this is something that you want to do and you're willing to work for it and you're willing to do well in your courses, then it's something that's, achievable.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So unfortunately, just because of time, we're just going to take one more question and then we will wrap up our guest speaker portion. So our next question will be from Melody.
Hi, Nia. I hope you're having a good rest of your day. I had a
Thank
quick
you.
question.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend for high schoolers to differentiate themselves from other really well accomplished students? And what do you recommend for us to build those professionalism skills? I don't know how to word it, but how to be respected and come off as a leader.
Yeah. Well, I think once again, to everyone who's on this Zoom right now, I think you're doing a great job. The fact that you are here and knowing that you want to take the steps to reach your goals and be a future physician is amazing. I think in high school, the biggest thing was I'm trying to remember. It was my freshman year, I just wanted to get involved. But from there, I really dived into my passions, right? Because, everybody does, certain activities, but that's what I think makes you different, is truly following your passions. And I'll give you an example, right? Right? People do sports, people are in the National Honor Society, but if there's something that you're passionate about, you can make an initiative to start something, start an organization, whether it's in your school or in your community. I think those things are really what makes you different, because it's not just like everybody else. This is your own passion. Yeah, but in high school, I would just say, making that foundation in your academics of doing well, being involved in things that you like. If, you want to be involved, I was involved in the orchestra. I loved it because it was a break from my science classes. Like one period where I can just play my violin. I really enjoyed that. Things like that, I think will set you apart, because it's like you're uniquely passionate about things that I may not even be interested in, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. And I think this may be the last question, but I am going to give them my PowerPoint slide. On the last slide, I have my LinkedIn, I have my email, and I have listed the Health Hotspot page, and then also briefly some opportunities that I talked about, just in case you guys didn't catch it. Or if you have a question that you direly want answered, you can ask me later. But yeah, thank you guys so much for allowing me to speak to you guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nia. So just like Nia mentioned, I know there are a few of you who didn't get your questions answered. So feel free to reach out to Nia after the session. But a little tradition we have here at Medicine Powered is we like to give our guest speakers a little virtual round of applause. So if everybody can click the react button and click the clap emoji. This is going to be a virtual round of applause for you, Nia.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nia. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. All right, so Rourke will be releasing the first poll for attendance just about now. So while I set up our workshop, you guys can take some time to fill that out.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Will she share the presentation with us?
Yes, she will. So when she sends that to us, we will send that through on the Slack channel to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep, no problem.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Will she like send her email out or where would it be found?
So we will contact Nia afterwards, and for whatever information she's comfortable with providing, we will definitely send that to you guys.
Would that be on the Slack?
Yes, everything
Okay.
will be communicated through Slack.
Thank you.
No problem.
A quick thing, I can't see the poll.
It should pop up on your screen. Are you on a computer or a phone right now?
I'm on the phone. Is it able to pop up?
Okay, why don't you send a message to Rourke on Slack and he can help you figure that out after. So it's okay if you don't get a chance to fill it out now, as long as you
To
send a
who?
message.
To who?
To Rourke. You can find him on our Slack channel. Yeah, he can provide his, I guess, his username on Slack in the chat, and you can find him from there. All right, I'm gonna give you guys 1 more minute to answer the poll, and then we can get started.
Do you still get attendance if you get the poll incorrect?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Just to confirm, are you guys able to see the slideshow?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to get started. Let me hit present. I'm just gonna close the poll right now. So, oh, looks like Rourke already closed it. We'll just share the results quickly. And let's get started. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our workshop on public health, community health, global health, and a little bit of epidemiology. So today's workshop will really just be a crash course, where we'll delve into the foundational concepts of how all of these different levels of health play a vital role in improving health outcomes and addressing health disparities both locally and globally. Okay, so just to give you guys a brief overview of the agenda, we might not able to cover everything just because we are on a crunch for time, but we'll go over kind of the multifaceted definition of public health, some of the major breakthroughs, as well as social determinants of health. We'll then move on to discuss the relationship between global, community, and public health. And if we do have time, we'll wrap up with the PERI approach, which I'll discuss later on, as well as a public health case study, which hopefully you guys got a chance to read up on. Okay, so first things first, if you guys could just type in the chat, when you think of public health, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Okay, so I'm seeing vaccines, COVID, the CDC, helping the community, global cooperation, disease prevention. Yes, these are all great ones. Responses to community health problems, equal access to healthcare. Amazing. So these are all some great points you've mentioned about public health. I think you guys kind of understand the gist of it. But I'm just going to go over the definition of public health. So public health is truly an evidence-based science that focuses on health promotion, surveillance, and organization to tackle leading health challenges. So public health involves assessing population health, developing policies to address different health issues, assuring that everybody has equal access to healthcare services. The main goals of public health are to prevent disease, prolong life, and overall promote health through community efforts, education, and disease. And so, a really popular definition out there that was said by CEA Winslow is that public health is the science and art of preventing disease, prolonging life, and promoting health. Okay, so we are going to go over, can you make the slideshow full screen? Yes, give me 1 second.
I have one question.
Yes.
Will the Arabic workshop be sent later?
Yes, it will. Are you guys
Okay.
able to see the slideshow right now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Maybe if you guys are on a phone, you might want to try joining on a laptop, just because I see some comments in the chat. But just to continue on, so let's go over some key concepts when it comes to public health. So the first term we're going to talk about is an endemic. And an endemic refers to the constant presence of a disease or infectious agent within a given geographic area. Moving on, an epidemic refers to the occurrence of more cases of a disease than expected in a given area. And epidemics are often sudden and widespread outbreaks of a specific disease that affects a large quantity of people. There's also a cluster, which is a little bit more small scale. So a cluster refers to a group of cases in a specific time and place that might be more than expected. And lastly, we have pandemic, which I'm sure we're all familiar with at this point, but a pandemic is an outbreak of a disease that occurs across continents. And so the COVID-19 pandemic is a very recent and impactful example where the disease spread across the globe, affecting millions of people. So now it's time for a little bit of fill in the blank. So I have 4 sentences here, and I want you to try and figure out if the blank is either an endemic, an epidemic, a cluster, or a pandemic. So, malaria is present in Africa at all times because of the presence of infected mosquitoes. Malaria is blank in Africa. So, feel free to type it in the chat. Perfect. I'm seeing endemic. Yes. So the key word is that it's present in all times. Oops, sorry. Okay, the next one. The Ebola virus in parts of Africa is in excess of what is expected for this region. This virus is a so this one is epidemic. I'm seeing a lot of epidemics in the chat. Good job. Next, HIV or AIDS is one of the worst global diseases in history. It is that's definitely a pandemic. And last but not least, an outbreak of measles occurred at Factory X in Texas. This group of cases in this specific time and place can be described as. Perfect. A cluster. So again, a cluster is a little bit more a small scale compared to an epidemic. Okay, so we're just going to go over a few more terms. So starting off with morbidity. Morbidity describes the state of being diseased or unhealthy within a population. So, for example, the morbidity rate of diabetes in a community would indicate how widespread the disease is within that population. Moving on to mortality. So, mortality refers to the state of being mortal or the number of deaths in a given population from a particular cause. And mortality really helps us identify the impact of diseases. And finally, the last term is determinant. A determinant is a factor that contributes to the generation of a disease. And this can include a wide range of factors such as
Miss Davina, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your slides aren't changing, like as you go through the words.
are you guys able to see the slides with morbidity, mortality, and determinant?
Unfortunately, no.
No.
Same for my end too. Put it in presenter view in the
Okay,
Canva.
I'm so sorry, guys. Let me reshare.
No. It was stuck on the public health slide.
Got it. I'm just going to reshare. Okay, are you guys able to see it now?
We can, yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, I'm just going to open up the chat again. Okay. So so as I was saying, determinant can include ethnicity, genetic makeup, environmental exposures. There's a wide variety, which we'll go into more depth later. Okay, so now we're going to look at some major breakthroughs when it comes to the history of public health. Public health as a discipline has evolved significantly over the years. Early public health efforts date back all the way to ancient civilizations where people implemented very basic sanitation practices. So we're going to take a look at a timeline of some of the major breakthroughs in public health. And each of these eras marked significant shifts in how we chose to approach disease prevention. So starting off with health protection, this started all the way dating back from ancient civilizations to the 1830s. And this era focused on protecting populations from health threats through religious and cultural beliefs. Moving on to the hygiene movement, this era emphasized the importance of clean water, sewage systems, and personal hygiene to prevent disease. The contagion control was when the germ theory of disease was established. For some of these, by the way, we are going to go a bit more in depth, which is why I'm skimming over them. Moving on to the 1950s to the mid 1980s, where public health professionals began to focus on filling those holes in the medical care system when it came to healthcare access and quality. Moving on to health promotion and disease prevention in the 2000s, where the emphasis was shifted towards how can we prevent chronic diseases through lifestyle changes and health education. In terms of population health, this period introduced a much broader perspective on health, where we started to take a look at what are the social determinants of health and the need for a coordinated public health effort. And lastly, when we're looking at our current era post-COVID, there's really a renewed focus on preventative measures, and a big part of this involves vaccinations. Okay, so taking a look at the health protection era, as mentioned, this era was primarily guided by religious rituals and cultural customs. So, for example, practices like not eating meat, because at the time it was known to transmit diseases. Male circumcision was also another big one. It was prevalent in a lot of cultures because it was for health benefits such as hygiene and disease prevention. Other other factors include premarital abstinence as well as dietary restrictions. So the next era was the hygiene movement. And this was really significant because it was the first time where we started to use evidence-based science to help solve an epidemic. And during this epidemic, there was a growing recognition that sanitary conditions played a crucial role in preventing disease and promoting health. So one of the most notable events of this period was the work of John Snow. John Snow was a pioneer in epidemiology, and his observation during the 1854 cholera outbreak in London really revolutionized our understanding of how diseases propagate. And so that's why he kind of got the name the father of epidemiology. And so epidemiology is really it's defined as a study of the distribution and determinants of diseases or disorders within groups of people. So just to go a little bit more in depth into the cholera outbreak, at the time, London faced severe cholera epidemics, and the widespread belief at the time was that the disease was transmitted through what they called miasma, which basically means bad air. But John Snow kind of doubted this hypothesis, and he believed that cholera was actually transmitted through contaminated water sources. So his approach began with mapping cholera cases. So on the diagram to the right, the red dots map show the different street pumps where he noted that cholera cases were a little bit higher. And so through different statistical methods and interviewing people, he collected data on affected individuals. And he was actually able to trace the patterns of infection back to the contaminated water from a specific street called Broad Street. And his study provided compelling evidence that cholera was waterborne rather than transmitted through miasma. And so the Broad Street pump study had a profound and lasting impact on epidemiology. It really laid the foundation for modern epidemiology. And after this, the number of cholera cases significantly declined. And it also led to improvements in water supply and sanitation infrastructure. All right, so moving on to the contagion control era. This era focused on controlling communicable diseases through different systematic approaches. So public health efforts were guided by the understanding of the germ theory, which we'll go into more depth later. There were really three components of this action framework. Number one being environmental control, so looking at ways to improve sanitation. Number two, vaccinations. And number three, investigating outbreaks. So some notable events during this era included the establishment of tuberculosis sanatoriums. These are basically places where patients were isolated and they were treated in controlled environments in order to prevent the spread of the disease. And another significant event was the work of Goldberg on pellagra, which was a devastating disease with symptoms like dermatitis, dementia, and even death. So in the early 20th century, pellagra plagued the southern United States. And although it was thought to be infectious, Joseph Goldberger, similar to John Snow, thought otherwise. He was a pioneering physician, and he hypothesized that pellagra was actually caused by a dietary deficiency rather than an infectious agent. And so he worked at orphanages where he introduced a more varied diet that was rich in fresh meat, milk, and vegetables. And what he found was that these dietary changes actually led to a significant decline in pellagra cases, which supported his theory. And to further test his hypothesis, Goldberg did something a little bit unconventional. So he hosted what we call filth parties. And essentially, what he did was him and some other volunteers actually ingested skin, blood, and other secretions from pellagra patients. And believe it or not, they did not contract the disease. And so this experimental proof basically just reinforced the understanding that pellagra was linked to a nutritional deficiency rather than a contagion. And through later research, they identified that the deficiency was niacin, which you might know as vitamin B3. And so afterwards, they were able to implement more niacin into diets in order to eradicate the disease. All right, so moving on to the germ theory of disease. Now, the early understanding of disease transmission had a heavy focus on environmental factors rather than microscopic organisms. And as mentioned before, the predominant belief was the miasma theory, which attributed illnesses to bad air. However, a new theory was introduced in the late 19th century that revolutionized medical practices and microbiology. So, three key points of the germ theory. So, the germ theory of disease, first of all, is a fundamental principle where it proposed that microorganisms were the cause of many diseases. So that was the first point. And the second point was that diseases can actually spread through various means, like direct contact with infected individuals, contact with contaminated surface, consumption of contaminated food or water. And the third key point was that when microorganisms invade the host's body, they actually multiply and cause disease by disrupting the normal physiological functions. And so the acceptance of the germ theory prompted the development of vaccines and antibiotics. And that leads us to the next slide, which is the eradication of smallpox. Excuse a little typo there. But smallpox was caused by the variola virus. And what's astonishing is that smallpox has a mortality rate of approximately 30% globally, which is just incredibly high. And so the key steps in eradicating smallpox, number one started with variolation. And this involved exposing individuals to material from smallpox sores, which sometimes resulted in a milder form of the disease and confirmed immunity. Edward Jenner's vaccine, which was developed in 1796, was actually the first successful smallpox vaccine. And she actually used the cowpox virus to develop this. And this was just like an incredible breakthrough that introduced the concept of vaccination, and it provided effective immunity against smallpox. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly go over some additional measures that were taken for the eradication of smallpox. So the World Health Organization, they also launched a global smallpox campaign, and their goal was really to vaccinate as many people as they possibly could in order to contain the outbreak. Other strategies included isolating infected individuals, surveillance to detect and diagnose new cases, containment measures like ring vaccination. And this is where when there was a confirmed case, that person was actually surrounded with vaccinated individuals to prevent further transmission. And so obviously there were some challenges that were met, including some logistical difficulties. But in the end, the eradication process was successful. And on May 8th of 1980, the World Health Organization officially declared smallpox eradicated. And this was a pivotal moment in history because it was the first and only disease to be eradicated through human efforts. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at some current challenges and global trends. One thing that I really want to emphasize is that when it comes to disease prevention and health promotion, there are many layers of care associated with it. So, for example, if we're looking at the AIDS pandemic, there's so much more beyond just getting tested for HIV. And so on the slides, you can see five different sort of interventions in order to tackle disease prevention. So it starts off with prevention strategies. When we're looking at AIDS in specific, it's implementing measures such as safe sex practices, testing and early diagnosis. There's also education and awareness. So again, increasing public awareness through campaigns. Stigma and discrimination reduction is a big one, especially with this pandemic. And lastly, it's really important to target our interventions to meet the needs of specific key populations. Okay, and so this graph, this map basically shows the prevalence of HIV and AIDS. And so the red and the darker areas show where it's more common. Okay, so I am going to skip this slide just in the interest of time, but it will be posted for you guys afterwards. So if you want to take a look at it. But it's essentially just looking at another global health challenge, which is maternal mortality. And an interesting statistic about this is that in the year 2020, every day, almost 800 women died from preventable causes related to pregnancy and childbirth. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the different layers that encompass healthcare. So the diagram here shows it's supposed to be in a triangle shape, but the point of it is that none of these can exist without each other because they're just so intertwined. So for example, healthcare systems, at the core of healthcare provision are government-run healthcare systems, and they're really responsible for ensuring access to essential medical services. We also have population health. So there are a lot of initiatives that focus on improving the overall health income, the overall health outcomes. Social policy. So when we have an increased investment in healthcare infrastructure, that leads to more success. And last but not least, our traditional public health. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at some social determinants of health. While genetics and health behaviors obviously impact our health, there are a plethora of social determinants that have a greater effect on individual and population health. And so social determinants are really the conditions in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age. And so the impact of these social determinants may not always be as clear as genetic or biological determinants, but they definitely have a significant impact. So, for example, people with lower levels of education may be less likely to live healthier and a longer life, just because education is generally linked to income and employment, as well as job security and health insurance. So some other social determinants include income and social protections, education, early childhood experiences, physical environments, working life conditions, housing, food insecurity, culture, and race. And understanding these determinants of health is really essential for addressing health inequities, which are essentially unjust differences in health outcomes between different populations or groups. So I'm just going to give you guys a minute to read these two situations. And in the chat, you guys can identify some different health outcomes. I'm gonna open the chat here. Yeah, so feel free to type it in the chat.
Excuse me, what are we supposed to type in the chat again?
So after you've read the slide, you can highlight some specific social determinants of health. So one example may be income. One example might be health insurance. Yep, so I'm seeing race, culture, limited job opportunities. Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is just, again, a diagram that shows the effect of social determinants. And it says that the physical environment, social determinants, and behavioral factors actually drive 80% of health outcomes versus access to healthcare only is 20%, which just goes to show the impact of social determinants of health. Okay, so I think in the interest of time, I know we are reaching 7 o'clock. So if you guys need to go, you're definitely feel free to, but if you want to stick around, we will be discussing the case study that we had you guys read earlier, just to have a discussion on more of those social determinants of health.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
When will the second poll be posted? Oh, okay, never mind.
There you go. All right. And one thing we really want to emphasize is that global public and community health are all interconnected, and that all health programs rely on epidemiology in order to identify things like disease trends, determine risk factors, and evaluate the effectiveness of interventions. And COVID happened at a global scale, yet impacted nearly all communities. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly go over two approaches when it comes to solving public health challenges. So the first one is a high risk approach. And this approach really focuses on those who have the highest probability of developing a disease. And the next approach is an average approach. And this one is a little bit different because instead of focusing on the most vulnerable population, it focuses on the entire population and aims to reduce the risk for everyone. So obviously there are pros and cons attached to the two of them, but when it comes to tackling public health challenges, the best solution is a combination of both the high risk and the average approach. Okay, so we're going to move on, and now we're going to take a look at the Perry approach. I'm going to briefly go through this just so we have time to look at our case study. But the Perry approach is an accepted framework that tons of public health professionals use for evidence-based solutions. So the P stands for defining a problem. The E is etiology. So this is when we are trying to provide a cause for that problem. Moving on to the R is when we develop recommendations to improve the problem at hand. The I is implementation. So after we've chosen a recommendation, we actually implement it in the community. And after it's implemented, the E is for evaluation, where we evaluate the reach and the success. Okay, so when we're looking at two ways to describe a problem, there are two methods we use. So one is called the burden of disease. So the burden of disease is basically the occurrence of disease and death due to a disease. And the course of disease examines how often the disease occurs. So some questions we want to ask when we're looking at the distribution of disease is, where is it occurring? Who is it primarily affecting? Is it women? Is it men? Are they from a specific geographic region? There are also two terms that we want to look at. The first is incidence, which is the number of new cases of diseases in a year. And prevalence refers to the number of the population living with the disease. Okay, and the next step in the PERI approach that we will be briefly looking at is etiology. Okay, so as you can see in this diagram, it's a flowchart that shows you the different levels when it comes to etiology. So at the first level, we have group association. And this is basically a population level study where we develop a hypothesis. So one example we have here is men began mass consumption of cigarettes decades before women. And therefore, their rates of developing lung cancer is increased. And so within etiology, there are sort of three requirements to determine a cause and effect. The first one being, is there an individual association? So are individuals with a disease like lung cancer more likely to be smoking? So lung cancer patients were found to have 10 times the chance of smoking cigarettes regularly compared to those without lung cancer. The next requirement in etiology is cause and effect. So what this essentially means is, do you have to smoke first in order to get cancer? And so large cohort studies found that those who smoke cigarettes regularly have 10 times the chance of developing lung cancer. Okay, and the last one I briefly want to talk about is altering the cause and altering the effect. So if you stop smoking, does it alter the health? And obviously, when people quit smoking, their chance of developing lung cancer is a lot lower. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the case study. I'm hoping you all had a chance to go over it. Again, if you have to leave, I know we're hitting 7 o'clock. That's perfectly okay. But we're just going to stick around for maybe 10, 15 minutes to discuss the case study. So I'm just going to read over the executive summary, and then we're going to dive into some questions. So in Guatemala, rural and indigenous women face disparities in access to cancer care to prevent and treat this disease. The case analyzed the barriers faced by Mayra, an indigenous woman from a rural community who's diagnosed with cervical cancer. And so some of the challenges and barriers they faced were related to economic, geographic, linguistic, and cultural barriers. Accompaniment and care navigation are potential solutions to overcome these impediments. So now let's take a look at some questions. They are going to be posted on the slides, and you guys can feel free to type your ideas in the chat. So the first question is, what structural and systemic barriers prevent Indigenous women in Guatemala from accessing cervical cancer treatment? I'll give you guys a minute to type in the chat. Language barriers, definitely. Income, lack of facilities. Yes, yes. Language barriers, finance. Perfect. So you guys are basically hitting all of them. Another one that I didn't see mentioned was geography. So many indigenous communities in Guatemala reside in more rural areas, which are farther from healthcare facilities that offer advanced level treatment for cancer, cervical cancer. So the next question is, what role do language barriers play in the communication between Indigenous women and healthcare providers? And how do these barriers affect the delivery of care? I'm seeing bias. Yeah. Learning about the disease, how it is carried, the procedure, and why it is carried out. It's harder for these women to communicate their situations without a loss in translation, definitely. Women cannot describe their symptoms. They didn't understand much of what was being said by the healthcare provider. Being able to explain how you feel or what you feel, yeah, that's definitely a big one. Yeah, so again, you guys hit a lot of the points, but language barriers can lead to all sorts of things like miscommunication, not understanding their symptoms, and just overall not being able to make informed decisions. Yes, increases unfamiliarity and alienation. Okay, the third question we have is how can healthcare providers build trust and foster better relationships with Indigenous communities to improve healthcare services? Try to learn languages or have a third person who can translate. They can ensure they understand the patient and have a sort of translation. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of stuff on translation. Another thing that our guest speaker discussed on Monday was that, you know, when you work with these communities, a lot of these times they already have their own approaches to health and medicine, right? And sometimes it's about communicating and learning more about their strengths and their existing approaches instead of trying to just implement your own ideas without considering theirs. Having multilingual doctors. Yeah, for sure. Okay, and the last question we have is what specific policy changes can be implemented to reduce disparities in cervical cancer care for indigenous women in Guatemala? Knowing the proper history of the patient. Frequent checkups, changes in insurance qualifications, yes. Yes, having closer hospitals that, yeah, giving patients access to proper medical insurance, giving people free education programs about what to do and spread awareness about the cancer. Yeah, definitely. We didn't touch upon education much, but that's definitely a social determinant that affects this issue. Yeah, so some policy changes can be allocating resources that are specifically for cervical cancer screening in these Indigenous communities. Possibly introducing incentives for more healthcare providers to work in undeserved, more rural areas in order to ensure that everyone is really having that equal access to healthcare. And like you guys mentioned, really focusing on strengthening healthcare infrastructure in these areas in order to improve treatment services. Cheaper treatments, yeah, bringing screening to where rates are lower, yeah. I'm seeing a lot of free checkups. Yeah, so these are all great ideas. So that wraps up the questions we have. So we do have another initiative that we will be introducing later on called the Global Health Initiative. So if you guys want to get more involved in public health and global health, definitely stay tuned for that. I believe it will be introduced later on in the program. But otherwise, that wraps up our workshop for today. The workshop will be posted in the Slack because I know there were a few slides that we didn't have time to cover or go in, go in depth to. So other than that, thank you so much for sticking around. I know we did go a little bit past 7 o'clock, but yeah, you guys are good to go. In the case that some of you weren't able to submit a poll, you guys can just give Rourke a message on Slack and he will get back to you. But yeah, you guys are good to go. Thank you so much. We'll see you at the next session.